Welcome to the Spoiler Alert podcast, and today is another episode in our Halloween marathon. We are going to be reviewing Pascal Laugier's Martyrs. It was released in 2008, and just before we get started into the detailed review here, it would be great if everybody watching on YouTube hit like, hit subscribe, hit the bell. If you're watching on YouTube, try us out on Spotify. If you're listening on Spotify, try us out on YouTube. We now have a Patreon, and we're available wherever podcasts are found. The opening scene of the film, we're in this like industrial area. It looks like looks like factories, like the French like equivalent of Cleveland or whatever. Like there's this girl whose head is shaven, and she's obviously been tortured because she's got bruises, cuts. The clothes she's wearing are really old and like dirty and like not changed, probably been there for months, it seems. And she's running away and crying, and then we get into the opening credits straight from that, which is footage from 1971 where people are kind of explaining like, oh, this is where this girl was found, and no one ever found out who was capturing her.
Well, we see, and I mean, the hospital is putting together a sort of document on their patients or whatever. So, so there's just footage of her, obviously like a state of catatonia, not getting along with the other children, just things like that. And somewhere in there, we see that she bonds with a girl named Anna. Yeah,
and
so
Anna, I believe, was there because her parents were abusive, right?
At least the mother, yeah. So, because from that phone call later in the film, that's what seems to be indicated. But yeah, it's kind of, so I don't know if it's like, it's not an orphanage, but it's a hospital, but it's also, I don't know exactly.
Yeah, maybe some in between. She probably spent a good amount of time in an orphanage and a mental institution. I don't know.
Yeah,
we don't get a ton on Anna's background. One thing I like about this movie is that it doesn't delve into too much like what's the word, exploitation, where if you like even Alien 3 showed a little more like violence to kids than this movie.
But it's said at the beginning of the film, and it's a bit of a mystery that that Lucy wasn't raped. That's the only thing they can tell for sure. So obviously, the question would be, well, then what was the point of? Because typically those two things go hand in hand. So yeah, so you're kind of like wondering what they're after, like what the point of just torturing a kid is. So yeah, I suppose that's like kind of the first mystery. After that documentary plays or whatever, the police show up at the hospital, and they ask Anna, if Lucy's had any breakthroughs in identifying who did that to her. Anna says that she doesn't think Lucy can remember, and that's one of those things where it's like, the police don't really have a lot to go on, and hearing that might have been maybe the final nail in the coffin of trying to find these people, so, which kind of could be a bit of a guilt trip if, later on, if Anna not believing Lucy, perhaps is the reason the police stopped investigating, and this was allowed to go on.
Anna not believing Lucy caused a few problems that we'll get into. There's like this dark figure, kind of like shadow ghoul or whatever, that attacks Lucy at night, and in a adjacent scene we see like her in a bathtub with cuts on her arms,
and she says she didn't do it, which is kind of the other thing though. It looks like Anna's going to try and help her cover it up, but realistically, how you could in a medical facility get away with cutting yourself up that bad? We see she's scarred all over the place. It's just hard to imagine they'd let her go,
I feel like they didn't get away with it.
Well, okay, because I thought the idea was that Anna helped her successfully hide this, but it seemed like such a recurring.
I always thought it was more that she helps like her just deal with it, like a little bit. because she's the
All
only
right.
one that she can even talk that will
Well,
even.
because I remember Lucy was like, "Don't tell anybody," and all that.
Oh, yeah.
But whatever.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
I mean,
there's
they would definitely be checking wrists in a place like that.
right.
So they probably figured out that they
But then
probably
how
just
she ever
don't-
managed to get discharged in the first place when she's still clearly having these like psychotic episodes, I don't know. But like you said, it cuts to 15 years later.
and we just have this scene of like this really normal seeming family. It's like a fake scare where a sister is running away screaming, and then like this male figure who turns out to just be her brother like chases her down and tackles her, and like it's filmed as though it's like a violent scene, but it's kind of a fake out, and she's just like running away with like a letter from his girlfriend and making fun of him. So like they just seem like normal, like any movie family you've ever seen. They're talking about each other's future, this and that, and then the doorbell rings. The father opens it, and shotgun blast right through the chest.
Yeah, he goes flying back,
and it's Lucy all grown up.
which I gotta say, it was probably good casting for the little girl that played Lucy, because she does have a sort of a similar skin tone and eyebrows, and so like that's I always like because there have been some horrible where they try to pawn off some kid, or you pass off some kid as a younger version of it. They look nothing so I always feel like that's worth praising when they get it right. So
I believe she gets the mother next in the kitchen, and then she contemplates for a half a minute whether she wants to kill the brother or not, because she asked him, do you know what your parents did and all that, and it's kind of ambiguous. We don't know. I don't think.
I mean, I think he does, but I mean, but he kind of just shrugs like, you're crazy. What what am I supposed to, But I mean, just my read on him, I think when I first saw it, like I did think that's kind of the thing. I mean, the movie plays around with a bunch of different things. So, but the way that scene's shot is, I think, just done fantastically well. Because, like, I mean, it doesn't, she's got the gun on him, and but it's focused completely on him. And so, even though I thought, well, this movie just opened with a guy getting his chest blown out, I did think, and I was aware of its reputation to some degree, that like, okay, she's probably going to do it, because it's that kind of movie. It's already established, it's going to go for the shock. But I just, you would have expected the camera to cut back to her face, and the trigger pull or so. It doesn't. It just, and you just jump out of your chair because there's no warning,
It just stays on him when the decision is made.
Right. So I thought that was really just a great technique. So.
And then the sister makes a run for it, but eventually gets shot as well. She tried to hide under the bed, and she shot through the bed, and there's like these feathers that like cascade down, and it's just a cool looking shot.
Right.
Like, they didn't have to do something like that. They could have just, killed her. They went out of their way to, do something that looked visually interesting.
Right.
I don't know. I appreciate it.
But so, the other thing, because it'd be relevant later, is that, I mean, a lot of these shots are very frenetic. I mean, not like some people might hear that and go, uh-oh, not ridiculous, not like some of those Lionsgate action films or anything. I mean, but just it's very, it's very action heavy. Like the camera's active, and it's But about midway through the movie, it changes and really just becomes this unflinching, unrelenting presence. Like the camera doesn't blink.
I think kind of what you're getting at there too is there's these two different film theories. One's montage, one's mise en scène. So what montage is, it's a collection of shots spliced together that maybe separately or just a little bit out of
I mean, I watched the making of behind the scenes stuff, and that's exactly how he was doing those shots early on. I mean,
they wouldn't make sense, but like mise en scène is like long takes. So think of like The Revenant, or
all right.
like in an extreme case, or the second half of this film where you have longer shots, where they're more emotionally based or whatever. But again, back to montage, like one example of montage is sometimes like I've seen The Departed so many times that sometimes I like, or and like movies like
And that's so chaotically edited and everything too.
yeah, it
kind of
is like Goodfellas and The Departed are both very chaotically edited.
I'm trying to
Like,
think of his editor. It's a woman, but I like her. I mean, I liked how rough it felt. You know?
Yeah, Thelma Schoonmaker, I think is how you would say it. Yeah, she's a great editor. But yeah, like there's like some like just very quick transitions. And in any movie, I guess like you could have like a scene where like, you know, a salesman gets a text, see him open his phone, you get the text for a fraction of a second, close his phone, and then he's on the other side of the state making a sale, like in the next shot. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that would be montage, and then mise en scène is like just longer takes, like more naturalistic takes, you know. So yeah, we definitely see a big division with that in the first half of the film and the second half. So because like the first half of the film kind of seems like almost your normal like Exorcist or not The Exorcist, but like exorcism movie or ghost movie with
monster movie kind of thing.
Type of scares, and then it changes after Lucy kills the family. She turns and sees the figure because the figure's still around, and she looks up the stairs and she says like, I killed them.
She smears her hand in the blood of the mother and holds it up like, I did it, you know.
Stop haunting me, I'm sorry. Like, right. But the ghoul attacks anyway, and just very violently slashing at her back.
We don't get to see it clearly. It's again all those very quick cuts, and you know, but we do see that it's whatever it is. It looks very. I mean, it's obviously a woman and scraggly hair and just. I mean, totally emaciated and quick flashes of that, but it never lingers for long enough for us to make her out. But yeah, so the way that goes is, I mean, it attacks her. She runs upstairs, barricades herself. The creature seemingly slips off somewhere else in the house, starts clanking around in like the pantry or whatever. It sounds like, I'm just guessing, and that sound triggers one of Lucy's flashbacks, the banging of her chair. She's trying to get free, and the chains and everything. So
Lucy runs away, hides upstairs. We get the flashback of the father of the household basically like feeding her and then like smacking her around.
Yeah.
And then
we don't see his face clearly, but it's
right. It seems like his shape. And then Anna arrives, stitches up her back. After Anna stitches up Lucy's back, Anna starts burying some of the bodies, and then she discovers that the mother is still alive. And Anna at this point is kind of feeling fucked up about the situation and is willing to help the mother. So she's like telling the mother just to be quiet and she'll try to get her out of there, is the idea. But all this time, Lucy hears some noises and runs down and is like, is everything okay? And then Anna's got a body in her hand and she's like, I'm just fucking doing work over here. Yeah. And then Lucy says,
I thought she came back, which, I mean, one of the big indicators is that Anna doesn't seem terribly alarmed. So, I mean, about the creature, we never see the creature when Anna's there. So,
right. Yeah, that's important. And then in like the very next scene, the ghoul starts attacking Lucy again. And this time it's in the bathroom. And this is when we get the first good look of the ghoul, because it's like a brightly lit bathroom.
Yeah.
Like she's like holding her head over the bathtub and screaming.
Just doing these horrible contortions. I mean, just freaky as all hell.
So she's freaking out. Anna's trying to bust in the door. Anna finally busts down the door after a while. And then, the ghoul, like you said, isn't really around whenever they're both around, because they're kind of their protectors. Like that's kind of like the root of their friendship almost, is like Lucy can talk to Anna about this stuff. And even if Anna doesn't 100% believe her, you know, or, you know, I think Anna would like to almost believe her, but also doesn't want to. I don't, that's,
Yeah, no, right.
that's a weird thing, but regardless, they're there for each other. So that's a big thing, because it really is. It's also kind of a movie about friendship, um, in a fucked up positive way.
Right. And then, and hopefulness, you said, at the end, it's with, letting your self go.
Self-actualization, you know?
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's so many positive messages here. It's really a feel good, pick me up movie.
After, like, when they're comforting each other, then we get a flashback of Lucy's escape. And this time it's a woman feeding her, and she like spits out the food or whatever, and then the woman unclicks her chains because she's probably just going to beat her or something, or go crazy on her, but she trips over like a metal
where the chain is bolted
thing,
into the floor.
where it's bolted down, a metal bolt, and then like you said, probably breaks her ankle. And
it looked like a break the way it bent. So
the audience is got at this point, like, the voice is very similar, the hair, the body shape, the height, like it's like 75% certain,
right, but there is still that room for doubt, and it's already such a horrible movie. You're wondering if it might not pull something like she did get it wrong, she is insane. I mean, I thought it was her too, but I've seen people that didn't catch on to the monster thing, which I kind of did, but they really that took them by surprise. So I mean, it's hard to say like what some people may or may not think.
And speaking of the monster thing, so on her way out, she hears like screaming in a different room, and she looks in a different room, and she walks in, she opens the door, and she sees that it's the same woman that is the ghoul that's been chasing her. And she's been, her, like, we don't really see exactly what's going on with her, but she seems to be in worse shape than Lucy.
She's shown from kind of an eerie distance and the lights flickering, but what we do see is not pretty. So,
and you can tell that she wants to save her, but she's hearing the woman scream for help, scream like, "Get that bitch."
Yeah, well, and then I think we hear like a metal door slam somewhere downstairs. So meaning that probably the husband hears her screaming and is coming. So
she's got to fucking run. So now we know that the ghoul is like a mental or physical at this point manifestation of her survivor's guilt, basically. And so that's why she wants to kill everybody and be like, do you accept this? Is this good enough for you? Somehow, basically, the woman makes a sound like painful moan, and that's when Anna tries to save her at this point, and like kind of like coax her out. And then
she's badly, she's been fucking shot pretty close range with the shotgun, so she's not doing so hot. I mean, she's snail's pace.
Like you said, moving at a snail's pace, and Lucy pushes Anna aside, has a hammer, and just beats the hell out of the mother.
Well, I think she accidentally, not deliberate, but whacks Anna with the hammer. So she's on the ground, really stunned, can't get back up, certainly can't stop Lucy from finishing the mother off. And she just caves her head in. And then she starts to smash everything in the room, says, "You never believed me." You do start to think if like, okay, maybe Lucy's going to turn on Anna. Now Anna has to run around the house and hide. It's a hide and seek thing. It might turn into that kind of movie, but that quickly goes out the window. But it's just playing with all these little horror tropes, and it never settling on anything and really keeping you guessing for that first half. So
now they are officially dead. Like, so you kind of think it in the back of your head, like, oh, maybe now Lucy has done her penance for the ghoul or whatever, and then the ghoul will stay away. But the ghoul doesn't. It doesn't leave.
Well, she calls it out. She says she can't hurt you anymore, and I'm sorry, and the creature shows up, and it looks quite pathetic. It's writhing around at the top of the stairs, and it crawls up to her, and it almost seems to be tender for a moment. It strokes her face and cradles her head in its hands, And then
And
things
Anna's
take
around in this scene. Like this is the first time that we as an audience see all three together. But
right.
Anna, and this is a big moment in the scene, still doesn't see the ghoul.
The creature grabs her by the head, looks tender for a moment, and then starts to smash it off the wall.
And then cutting her wrist
right
all the way down the arm.
Deep. Yeah. So
and when she's doing that, like, yeah, that's when we, looking through Anna's POV, we don't see the ghoul at all.
Right. We just see what we probably suspected, but maybe not everybody, that, it's in fact Lucy, slicing herself up, but smashes her head some more and tries to get out of the house. She runs, crashes through a window, runs out into the rain. Anna's still stunned through all this, so she's trying to crawl over to her, but I think she got whacked in the head with a hammer. So Anna runs out after her, having finally regained her footing, and Lucy turns to her and slashes her own throat. And that's the nice, clear halfway mark of the film. So
and she does it because she knows there is no getting away from like the ghoul, or
right.
In the psychology of the movie, the guilt of leaving that other person behind. So so she kills herself.
I tend to remember the latter half when I think about the film, but that time, like the first half really stuck out to me because without all the twists and turns and stuff, and you just know how that like Lucy's just such a horrifically tragic character that it really but it might not resonate as much on a first viewing because you don't know where it's going to go, and by that point you're just so exhausted. But I think on repeat viewings it's a lot more poignant. And in the second half, I guess we see Anna trying to clean Lucy's body up. She calls her mother, and we get a sense of what maybe her mother's not the worst person. I don't know. But it's clear she wasn't a great mother, and
Anna had to have some reason to be in that orphanage or whatever.
Right. So it must have been bad enough, whatever.
So it had, she had some issues too.
Right. The hammer, which had been, Lucy had tossed or whatever, is resting on a shelf on, I think, a fireplace or something. I think, or something like that, or some kind of, no, I think it was a liquor cabinet. It teeters and falls, and you hear this clang, 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 echo. So she goes to investigate, and that's where we find that there was a secret entrance. And I think we then know that's where it really takes a turn, because, you're like, okay, well, there's only one way this can really go for the second half of the movie. Anyway, so she goes down into this underground chamber, bunker, whatever. It's a lot of stainless steel, very medical, sterile lights. She sees these horrific images of, I don't know, people, I don't know how you describe them. They don't look like they're having a good time.
They seem like they're tortured or whatever.
Very anguished faces, and they all have the same expression. They're all like zoned out, looking upward, and so it's really disturbing imagery. She finds a hatch. She finds a key for it. I forget where. I don't know if it matters.
I think it's just held up there,
hanging on the. Okay, all right. Well, anyway, she unlocks it, climbs down this ladder into this pitch black room. Here's some chains. I don't know,
rattling,
clacking, rattling, whatever. About. She has a flashlight, and so she turns the corner, and there's this woman who's just. And I don't know how you describe. She has metal plates riveted over her eyes, over her. What would you call it? Crotch, I guess. Which I was thinking, well, then she can't.
Over her pelvis.
Yeah, I was gonna say, she can't even, obviously defecate, so she's probably going to be impacted inside. Just, like that's like its own form of torture, and it's just horrible, right? So she senses something in the room, and what should be horrific is, well, I think all the more so because it's just more, it's so pitiable and sad, it's like you're not, because it's clearly a human, and then she's been alone, isolated so long, she just starts to, it doesn't matter who it is, hug Anna's leg, and so somehow she gets her out of there. She doesn't seem like she'd be in great shape to climb a ladder, but somehow she manages. And then
we kind of cut ahead of that one to getting up in the ladder, but it's it's pretty fucked up. Um, and to me too, I don't think it's the exact same girl necessarily as like the girl that we saw that's like the ghoul. Like I don't think that's necessarily the same like the same manifestation or whatever you would
Right.
say. Like it's probably just someone else.
You know, it was almost a chance for Lucy to redeem herself if she had, you know, found that girl and they'd gotten her out of there. But you know,
if Lucy had stayed around to find that girl, like maybe that would have gotten the ghoul away from her, but maybe not.
maybe not. But she might have. Yeah, things might have went differently. They might have. Maybe not. Those people probably still would have shown up anyway. And you know, but I don't know. Lucy's looks a bit more competent. She did just slaughter a whole family, so I think she's out of shells. But I don't know. Maybe things would have went different. I don't know.
And then Anna gives this woman a bath, which seems painful initially for the woman because she's touching water for the first time in I don't know how long. And then I mean, like, you know, she could have called a doctor to try to get the bolts out of her head. I don't know.
I did well. So
he could have done like a traffic thing where they like do a drive-by and throw her out if she was worried about getting pinned on for the murders.
Yeah,
but
that's probably my only criticism of the film is that it's trying to keep her in the house, and you very much want her to get out of the house, because I think certainly in the back of my mind was, you know, there's a whole another half of this movie, and I don't think it's all going to be centered around her cleaning this girl up, you know. So I figured there's more to this, and we see in the next, basically the next scene.
And even when Lucy was just hanging around the house too, like it is kind like, I get what the movie has to do, but like they could have just fucking bolted, like just.
Well, they're trying to clean up, get rid of fingerprints, all that. I mean, I guess
you're not gonna get away with it. Well, I mean, they're gonna find whatever forensically that they're gonna find.
Yeah, there was just blood everywhere.
At some point, you just have to be like, we're living on the run. Like, we'll know that they know it's us or you.
It's going to be even worse for Anna, because if she finds Lucy, I mean, she's always associated with Lucy. They're going to know for sure it was her. So, I mean, that would be, you know,
right.
But yeah, like you said, just cut your losses.
She would have a lighter sentence, but because like.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose she just doesn't think there's anything more to it. Like, we got the people who did this. Maybe she can still, I mean, yeah, but morally, she should probably help the girl.
Yeah, it's one of those, it's one of those, it's, you know, it's a common thing, but like, it's like one of those things where it's like a horror movie or something where it's like, I think you would actually have a decent explanation if you talk to a lawyer here, you know. like I think you might just do like, you know, 6 months maybe.
I don't know. I don't know how it works in France. But especially considering these people were tortured. Yeah, she might get off lighter.
Hey, I mean, they were right, and they tortured her, and she snapped. So don't blame me for it, but that's what happened. I thought
I mean, still an accomplice or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I can't imagine they. You know, right. So it's easily the most glaring probably fault with the film.
Right. It's more of a glaring device is what it is. You know what I mean? Like you said, device to keep her in the house.
Right.
Which sometimes could be subtler, more subtle.
I mean, it does a good enough job. I mean, it could have been worse, just because it creates reasons for her to stay there, right? When she, you know, like she's passed out just from grief for the first night because Lucy's dead, so she can't bring herself to do it. So the next morning, you know, and then she cleans up the girl, and I mean, so not too much time has passed. You know, she's not totally camped out there for like a week or anything, you know.
And like you said, she kind of falls asleep. I believe she was dreaming about Lucy or something along those lines. I think we got a bit of a dream. But when she wakes up, she hears that the woman upstairs is screaming.
Yeah, howling.
And she starts kind of running down a hallway and trying to escape. And then we just see, similarly to how the son died, we don't see the shooter, but we see a bullet just go right through her head.
Yeah, it's quite horrible that the woman is trying to like saw her own skin off with a kitchen knife. So that's kind of important in the next scene. But yeah, and then she freaks out, knocks Anna down to the ground. She's so emaciated though. I can't imagine that whack had too much power to it.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was another thing that's like not a major criticism, but more of a nitpick.
One of those little things.
That's like, I think just about anybody that's eaten a burger in the last 20 years could manhandle her.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I don't know. Maybe she's so out of her mind with fright. She has like almost supernatural strength. I don't know.
She has that feral shit.
Right.
Where you're like a chimp is like as strong as 8 men.
Right. Yeah. So, but yeah, so she goes running down the hall and then just boom. And so.
And then that's when like we get like the secondary big plot twist, I suppose, where they're not like labeled with like a SWAT team or whatever, but they're almost operationally like a SWAT team.
Where they're moving in almost a formation, and they're doing a sweep. So
yeah, they're combing the area. They're looking at stuff. They finish burying the bodies. They clean things up. They put the rest of the bodies in there. They put Lucy's body right in with the mother, right in with the father, right in with the kids, right in with the other prisoner. And then Anna's imprisoned at this point. Mademoiselle shows up, and she's like this old lady with like scarf around her head. And go ahead with that scene.
She's impressed that Lucy was able to track this family down after 15 years. And the whole reason, sorry, we didn't explain that. Whole way Lucy was able to do it was that she saw a newspaper clipping because the little girl had won some swimming championship or something. The parents were there in the background, and from this newspaper, Lucy recognized them. And so that's how she managed to track them down in the first place. That's kind of a big thing. So she's impressed by that, but she says, as for everything else, I mean, Lucy was just another victim. And then she, like you said, explains the difference between victims and martyrs. Victims are just, I mean, they're broken, but martyrs envisage the suffering of the world. They take it on their shoulders and transcend themselves, and
they endure, and then they like reach like a different plane of existence almost,
Right. Yeah. And well, that's all she explains, that's the idea. Like, well, she shows all these horrible images of people in car wrecks, and they all have the same look, dying of cancer, whatever. And they all have the same expression. So they're convinced that these people have transcended this realm and are like in between this life and the next, to create somebody who can come back and relay what they've seen. That's their whole mission, which I mean, I think is a fascinating concept. It might seem flawed. I don't, but I also do. I mean, I don't know. I do see the benefit, the utility to definitively answering life after death. I mean, I think,
I guess it is kind of based in fact, because you see like a lot of stories where people reach up for the sky or people look up, but I mean, I guess the flaw in the storyline is like, you don't have to be that fucking tortured to have like for your eyes to go up when you're dying,
Right. Yeah. Right.
If it's that simple, like,
but somehow they became completely convinced of this. I mean, I don't know.
Which I'm more on the line of like, it's kind of flawed, and I don't.
No, I agree.
I wish there was maybe an extra element to the story, or to that element of the story. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, I mean, I love the movie.
A little more convincing.
It's like, no, I get it. It's one of those things that, I thought it too. That that's hardly confirmation that they're tranced out, but somehow they came to this conclusion. They never explain how they know, but they just somehow know.
Maybe if they had explained that, like, no, because that wouldn't work either. I don't know. It is a thing.
Unless it was like a Flatliners thing where they just started doing this just to do it, and then like just to see if there's anything, and then like somebody got all tranced out, but then if nobody's relayed then how do you? Yeah, it's just
that's what I was gonna say is like the one way I would like get away, I would like do it. I'd like maybe believe it more is if like they had heard stories of them telling stuff about the afterlife to others, but at that point wouldn't
Never
that person
documented.
have already known, right? And then it wouldn't be necessary to keep doing it. So I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just, that's just
If especially if the logical
imperfect.
conclusion is to blow your brains out
It's not
after.
like a movie killer, that scene or that
No.
concept. It's just imperfect, and I'm, fucking.
Well, yeah, we're both struggling to figure out how you would exactly do it. It's a really intriguing concept, but yeah, how, I don't know. Well, anyway, she explains that.
It does, like I said, though, it does have some kind of grounding in reality where there are stories of people like reaching for the sky, and there's that, but it's just like the level of torture you would need to get there is kind of.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, that's the thing. I was also gonna say. So at the beginning of the movie, I don't know how big of a point it is, but well, because you could see rape as being a form of torture, but I think they don't want to psychologically damage people. They don't want to create people like Lucy. But like they want them to be lucid. But then again, they did put that one where those total sensory deprivation. I mean, so I guess there is sort of psychological, but I don't know. It feels like they're just throwing shit at a wall and hoping something's going to stick, because so they're trying all different forms of torture. They've had, it's later revealed, a few successes, but nobody who's come back. So one might imagine that they try to emulate that, and it's just not a rule for everyone. But she explains that they've tried this on little girls, on everybody, old, young, men, women, but it's
found that women are more susceptible.
Young women are somehow, for some reason, more susceptible, which I think the meta thing there is, like I said, that's just typically how it goes in these genre movies.
We have kind of a few different scenes of her, like instances of her getting just punched in the face and over and over, and they're feeding her like the same like gruel that they fed Lucy in the old place.
I mean, the thing is that there's this big burly dude who's beating her, like,
right, yeah,
and one, she refuses to eat this fucking green mush, she spits it out, and when he beats the shit out of her, like eventually she just, when he turns his back, she, hits it, like, so she's trying to hold on to her dignity throughout the course of this, but they just systematically wear her. I mean, her hair is shorn, and by the bloody end of it, her face is so tumid, she's completely unrecognizable. I mean, it's just, it's painful to look at. The torture scene feels longer than it is, but it's like, it's basically a montage, but it's just brutal. I mean, and she falls really bloody convincingly. I've also got, I mean, she's getting knocked out. He'll slap her back awake. I mean, and you hate this fucking, I mean, like, you're just so, I mean, so, when she punches him, that's exactly how you, I mean, I don't know. It's so hard to watch that whole sequence, which is the point. So, I mean, I know we're not breaking it down too much, but I mean, it is really just her being broken down for 20 minutes, maybe. I don't, it feels longer.
Okay, so then comes my favorite scene in the movie, where she's basically broken at this point and she's alone, and she starts to, in the voiceover, speak back and forth with Lucy. The message of that scene is to not be afraid of your fate, to not be afraid of death or the afterlife, or even like bad shit that would happen to you during life. Because if you let yourself go, and the meaning of that would be like, kind of like, I don't know, approach life in a weird, like in a way where like nothing can hurt you. And you won't be a victim, you know what I mean? You're gonna be a martyr.
Right, which is, I mean, yeah, so she kind of becomes like detached from the situation. I mean, which is what they want, and they're detached. I mean, it's like clinical and weird.
And the music in that scene is really great. There's like good piano, there's soft guitar.
Yeah, I wanted to say the soundtracks by I guess a group or band, whatever, called Seppuku Paradigm. I just really like the soundtrack, so I'm glad you mentioned it.
Yeah, it is a very good soundtrack overall. I just think that's like a weird like theme that's kind of applicable in like people's lives, where it's like, like it's better to walk through life without, like, be a good person, but like it's good to go through life without fearing the afterlife, I think. So that's why I think knowing the afterlife doesn't have any utility, because I think if people figured out what it is, they would be like, oh, everyone gets into heaven. Let's just fucking rape and murder everything. And then party down here, and then we're gonna party up there anyway. Or you have like fucking weird rules that's like, oh, if you do this and you do that, like,
well, who even knows? I mean, if it's heaven or hell or what it looks like. I mean, it's completely left open in the movie. But I mean, to me, I'm getting ahead. But since I don't know, I like to imagine it's just some horrible, inescapable knowledge that now that she knows, she knows it's inescapable and may as well just meet it head on. But that's because I'm cynical and, like it's just hell and there's no escaping what they've done. And you guys may as well enjoy your time here because you're fucked. It's like, I think it's how I took it. I'm not saying that's the correct interpretation. But I just took a more pessimistic look. But I mean,
well, I don't think that means Anna would be going to hell necessarily.
Well, no, I mean, who knows? Like, who knows what the after? Like, maybe it's not even traditional, like theological heaven and hell. Like, it could be any number of things, right? I mean, it could be, who knows?
So after she speaks to Lucy, the big dude comes down, and there's like this light in like a
these lights go on in the adjacent
room. On, yeah. And they open the door.
Well, before that, you have that woman who is feeding her gruel. Give her the only compassionate gesture, where I think it's Anna that grabs her hand and then just wants, if not affection, she's just like, she's showing that she's, accepted her role, and then so the woman actually is compassionate. And, again, the torture doesn't even start till halfway through the film. I think it's what makes it so disturbing is that we've spent so much time with this character. I mean, it's not like, say, Saw or Hostel or whatever, where you don't give a shit about them, and so it makes watching that play out, I mean, really horrible and I think that's why it's so shocking. I mean, but maybe not necessarily in terms of the gore itself, but the way that you get emotionally invested in the character and then watch them just go through absolutely unimaginable torment, so I think that's where it becomes disturbing.
And then they carry her into the lab, and in there's like this doctor wearing all black, and she's in this weird, like,
well, we saw it in Jacob's Ladder, one of those rotational, like, medical thing. Yeah, I don't know what you'd call them, but
and she's putting it belly down, and he cuts off her shirt, and then he takes a different pair of scissors, and we don't see it, but we see her face.
Yeah,
he starts cutting off her skin, and pretty much the next scene we see is she's flayed, and her eyes are beginning to like do the thing. And
when he just hangs her up like a piece of meat too. I mean, well, she starts staring to the light. I think, but then it actually breaks perspective, and then we see the husband, just like he's getting ready for work. I mean, he just, he shaves, showers, talks to his wife. She just casually asks, like, how was work, honey? Basically, it's really creepy. It's just really unsettling that people could be so disconnected from,
she asks, how's she doing? And he's like, amazing. And then she goes down with the gruel, and then we hear her kind of yell and get on the phone with Mademoiselle right away, and is like, she's seeing, or whatever term they use, where she's becoming a martyr. The Mademoiselle shows up. At this point,
she's submerged in fluid,
right? She's submerged in like this fluid, in this transparent bath, basically. Yeah, and she starts seeing like these visions where it's like this black and white tunnel of mist and smoke, and you look like you're in space, maybe.
But it also kind of looks like a 3D retina, like if a retina became a tunnel, and she's looking up at that lamplight. So like, well,
yeah, we kind of see this going on in her eye.
I was gonna say, it kind of reminds me of some of the trippier visuals in Gaspar Noé's like Enter the Void, which I don't know if you've ever seen that. I think you'd.
Yeah, I've seen Enter the Void. Enter the Void would be a decent recommend. I don't know. It's not horror at all, but
But it's still part of that French extremity movement, you know? Yeah. So I think technically.
And she asks Anna what she saw, and then we get an ambiguous just like lips, and we later learn that they had spoken for like 2 hours or something. Sometime later, maybe a day later that day, maybe a secret society of like rich old people show up, because rich old people would be the most
Interesting
wanting to know.
like this. Yeah, most of them are. Yeah.
Most people are just like, I want to know that the party keeps going. And
when you also wonder how disconnected they actually are from the process. I mean, it doesn't seem like, I think they all understand what goes on, but it's very different having to actually look at it. We do see people that are such firm believers that they can look at it and perpetrate all this because they so firmly believe in their cause, you know?
Right, but it's definitely like a butcher relationship where, you know,
not quite, because there is a reverence, you know. It's bizarre. It's a bizarre dynamic. I mean, these are their martyrs. They are in a weird way reverent of them. I don't think that's worth much to these people, especially just the victims created, you know, whatever. But
this dude does a big speech of like how like you said, the reverent, where like you know, she's gone farther and spoken longer as a martyr than anyone we've ever seen. This is an amazing case. She told Mademoiselle what she saw in the afterlife, and Mademoiselle is going to tell us today. And then he goes up to the bathroom to see if the Mademoiselle is ready. She's locked herself in the bathroom, and she's like, and she asks him, would you want to know what the afterlife is? If you could. He's like, yeah. And then she pulls out a gun in her purse, and then she says, keep doubting. And then she blows her brains out.
Yeah.
And then I believe it's like a straight cut to black, and we get a certain definition of martyr, which is witness.
Yeah.
And then we get a scene, one
final scene of Anna in the submerged in liquid, just tranced out, and which is a haunting image, and that's the one it ends on. But then it's end credits. It starts to play film reels of Anna and Lucy playing together as children, which I think is there to twist the knife. But also it's just like, that's probably the only reason it's there. But I also was just thinking, it makes you nostalgic for the beginning of the movie, which was already completely horrible, right? I mean, but it's such a downer ending that, you know, like, God, I just wish I could go back to when it was the monster tormenting people, you know. But I don't know. That's the film. So
yeah, and it's really interesting where they leave us, because because it does leave a very ambiguous ending as to what she said, because we don't know, did Anna, you know, see that there's like an afterlife for good people, an afterlife for bad people, and then these people that have tried so hard to learn about the afterlife in their efforts are going to hell because they're fucking murdering people, almost like Raiders of the Lost Ark, right?
Right.
Where,
I mean, that's kind of like what I think, you know, or maybe just that it's, if you want to be even worse than that, forget morals, just it's all hell and suffering and torment forever or something. I mean, who knows, right? It's, but we can't. I think you're so desperate for any shred of justice after watching this that I'd like to think that, that they're damned through their efforts. The more I think about it, I really don't see what invalidates that idea that like maybe she did just lie for revenge about the afterlife, you know, and tell Mademoiselle that, you know, it is unimaginable torment or something, or you're all damned or whatever, something to get them all to at least stop, you know, if not kill themselves outright or something, you know.
The only thing that makes me think about maybe that like there's like a positive spectrum to the afterlife in this story is that like that scene where she's remembering the conversation with Lucy about like fear and letting yourself go, because a part of that too was like when you're, I forgot what the term was, where it was when you're either in the dark or in danger or something, like, will you be there for me? And she's like, I'll be there for you.
And there might be a
that's the moral of her consciousness at this point. You know what I mean?
That, and yeah, I mean, and I think it's just anesthetic too for the audience. I mean, that because she has no choice but but I mean, she goes into it and does envisage suffering. And I mean, it's again that idea that like the audience is kind of the cult, and she transcends the very plot of the movie by and I'm like, that's why I mean it's completely ambiguous. There is no way of knowing. These are all possibilities. I mean, it could be horrible, it could be great.
So Dakota, what did you think of like the movie, like as a whole, thematically, meta-wise, anything like that for you?
I was going to say, I think the whole function of horror is confronting the fear of death and your own mortality. So you vicariously, confront that by watching horror. I think Clive Barker had said, I'm paraphrasing, but he put it really eloquently, like, there's no delight the equal of dread. People return to it over and over and probe it like a sore tooth, like, so there is something there. But in the case of like Martyrs, I think, well, it's kind of, I mean, I guess like the term torture porn is almost apt, just because I mean, it's like much like porn, it gets more and more extreme. And, it just like, I think people in their search for some, I don't know, some kind of answer. And I think the whole point of Martyrs, it sounds like a cop-out, but it's really, I mean, for one thing, you can't answer what's after life, I mean, obviously, so that's just not something the movie can do, but it does give its audience an answer, and that is that there's no answer. I think just the big thing is that, like, I think the audience is supposed to be the cult, I mean, and so there's that scene where like the blonde, actually shows Anna some affection, like she takes pity on her, much as like we as the audience do. Yet there's the contradiction that we're still gonna watch the rest of this movie, I mean, so
it's almost a commentary on the torture porn, or
and then like Anna's
audience's martyr. It's some girl suffering, which is something that's brought up earlier in the movie, that it seems to always be young women, because in horror movies it does tend to be young women. It's just the way it is, and so yeah, she's martyring herself for the audience here, because their need to confront, I think, death and mortality. And can I just get like some IMDb facts and shit out of the way? I'll be quick, right? Okay. So I drew up a page on that, and that it actually might tie nicely into my recommendation. So first, I guess I'd start with saying that there does exist a remake that came out in 2016, 8 years after the original release. I don't know how I described it to, an irredeemable mountain of shit. It is that.
Right. Just forget it exists.
Yeah, yes, and I mean that. Like even Jacob's Ladder, the remake, it was one of those where they played around with the original elements. Somewhere in there might have been a good script. There were ideas that were maybe worthwhile. Martyrs, the remake, is a mountain of shit. Don't ever watch it. Okay. So Pascal Laugier was the assistant director under Christoph Gans for Brotherhood of the Wolf, which came out in 2001. Shout just re-released it on July here of this year. So they do a lot of those cult classics 20 years later, I guess. And then Christoph Gans produced Pascal Laugier's first film. It's actually called Saint Ange, but here we got the generic, House of Voices. This isn't a good movie. But it's so confusing. I had no idea what was happening through the whole thing. It was his first film, but it has beautiful visuals. So if you just like pretty, eerie, creepy visuals and you don't want to know what the fuck's happening, this is a great movie. There are elements of it, some good directing, right? But the plot makes no fucking sense. So, and yeah, like you can tell there was this big moment at the end where it's supposed to be like a revelation, where you're like some emotionally impactful thing. I'm like, I have no clue. But I want to say also, there's a scene, an elevator scene. This came out in 2004. That's like ripped straight into Christoph Gans's Silent Hill adaptation from 2006. So he produced Silent Hill is going to be one of my recommendations. So that's why I thought it's just kind of a fun thing to point out. Pretty much. So then I would just say Laugier's other films. So then he did The Tall Man after this, starring Jessica Biel in 2012. It's not so much a horror movie, it's more of like a mystery, maybe thriller, but it has a lot of crossover with Martyrs, which got Jessica Biel really interested. She, like a lot of actresses, described she didn't want to do the girlfriend role. And actually, the actress who played Lucy, I believe it's, Mylene Jampanoy.
Yeah.
You know, again, she's a model for like Christian Dior, and I didn't really see her do much else. But she again said she was really glad that, you know, she wasn't playing a girlfriend. Well, I think it's an underappreciated role, like for those who can pull it off and make the most of it. Like the first thing that comes to mind would be like Natasha McElhone and Californication. She's just great. She does get to flex her acting. She's, you know, so but yeah, it's a role that I know isn't appreciated. But anyway, one of my recommendations, as weird as it would sound, is going to be a show called The Sinner, the first season anyway. I like all the seasons. The third one is a bit more mixed, but that was the first show she ever produced. She starred in the first season. You wouldn't immediately see the similarities, and it gets really ugly at the end. Like, I'm just surprised they showed that shit on like basic cable. But yeah, it's a great drama. It's a great whodunit, kind of like it turns into a bunch of different things, kind of like Martyrs does in a way. I would definitely recommend The Sinner. I think it's one of the best shows going right now. Nobody's watching it. This is going to be the other weird recommendation. Neil Marshall, where I feel like Pascal Laugier so far has peaked with his sophomore film. I think with Neil Marshall, it was The Descent. But they both have a lot of similarities. I mean, they have very female-centric casts, you know, other than Dog Soldiers, I guess, would be the exception for Neil Marshall. But Laugier did Incident in a Ghostland in 2018. So those are the 4 movies he's done. Saint Ange, Martyrs, The Tall Man, and Incident in a Ghostland. I would also say, weirdly enough, Parasite is kind of a weird. Yeah.
Parasite was one of the ones I was gonna do. I was gonna recommend Parasite and Get Out. We're gonna be the ones, because Get Out's got like the secret society kind of.
Yeah, that's actually a good pick.
Dakota, what is your final rating for Martyrs?
Well, yeah, my score is 4.5.
For me, it's probably a 3.5. I do like. It's just a little harder for me to embrace. Yeah, I absolutely do love a couple of scenes here, especially the let yourself go, and then like kind of the visions she has. Like I think we've said before, like you elevate towards horror more than me. Like I like a good amount of horror simply because I like movies. So like
yeah.
I'll like
you're no I'll watch anything, but yeah, I do have like my favorites, you know, and so horror is like one of them, and probably Nowhere, and I really like sci-fi, but in the last 10 years I've kind of been let down by that, so I don't know.
So you gave it 4.5, I gave it 3.5. That's all we have for today. Please click like, click subscribe, hit the bell so you know when we're getting new videos out. There's gonna be videos all month for this Halloween marathon. Halloween-based, horror-based. Some of them aren't exactly horror-based, but they're at least Halloween-based.
Creepy, yeah. Like,
yeah, or at the very least, Uncanny Valley.
Right.
Have a good one, everybody.